Hello and welcome. I'm Angèle Kamp and I'm an artist and a graphic designer. And today I have a fun class for you where we paint this watercolor heart with some flowers and some leaves. So to start off, I've got my Fabriano watercolor paper. This is 300 grams or 140 pounds. And I made a quick sketch of my heart and my flower here and also with the leaves. Anyways, let's get started. I've got my number 4 round brush from Da Vinci. I have a clean cup of water. And then for the colors that I will be using, for the dark pink, I've mixed perylene violet with some burnt umber, and I did the same as well for the light one, but then I added some white. These are all colors from Winsor & Newton, by the way. I will link them below. And let's just try out what the light color looks like on our swatch card. That looks nice. Okay, I'm going to get some of that paint onto my brush and we'll start off with our flower here. That's just a little bit too dark. Let me get some water so we can make it lighter. And we'll just move on to the next petal and then put a light wash of this light pink onto our flower. And I'm going to do the same with the other petals as well. Just create a light wash with our light pink. And this doesn't have to be perfect. I like creating some inconsistencies so we can see some of the textures. This leaf is a little bit too dark and too wet, so I'm going to dab it with my tissue paper. And I'm going to add some water here and there. And what that'll do is it'll create some texture while it's drying up. Now I'm going to get some more of my light pink on my brush. And then I'm going to dab it here in the center. So that will be a little bit darker. I'm just going to lift up my paper and let gravity help me out here so that the paint doesn't flow too much to the left petal. All right, let's just leave that to dry, and then I'm going to get my dark pink and we can paint these cute little flowers here at the bottom. And these don't have to be perfect either. Just go over them with your brush and give them a first wash. And I'm also going to add some darker pink here in the middle of our large flower now that it's still wet. And maybe add another little petal over here. And I want to make some of these small flowers a bit lighter in the middle. So I'm going to dab with my clean brush. I'm just dabbing it on tissue paper. And then I'm going to soak up some of the pigment just to create some highlights. Now let's paint that last petal here in the back. I want to paint it a bit darker because it's in the back and it has some shadow from our front petal. So this left side, it'll be a bit lighter. And then underneath here, I want to make it darker. Let me just get some clean water because this petal is just a bit too dark for me. I'm going to lighten it. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is if I want to create a pointy brush, I will twirl it on my plate. I'm going to grab some more of my light pink and then add it here in the middle. And then also underneath this petal here, just to make it darker. Okay, now let's take a look at our smaller flowers. They're still a little bit wet, so we can go over it one more time with a darker pink to add more contrast and more texture. And if you work in it while it's still wet, it will blend nicely. Otherwise, you'll create some harsher lines. This is called a wet on wet technique. And let me just dab that with my tissue paper and create a beautiful highlight. Look at that. All right, let's leave the flowers to dry and let's move on to our green. So I've mixed my color already with perylene green and a bit of yellow ochre. And what that'll get you is this beautiful dark olive color. All right, let's just start up here with the leaves. I'm going over it with my green. And you can create some of them lighter and some of them a bit darker. And while it's still wet, you can add some water or darker areas just to create some contrast and some texture. Now let's also paint our leaves down here. And I'll do the same as before. So I'll make some darker and some lighter. And for the lighter ones, you'll want to add more water. And for the darker ones, you'll want to add more pigment. All right, let's just leave that to dry. And now that it's dry, we can paint this last leaf over here. I want to paint it a really light green color, so lots of water. That looks really nice. Now, let me get my smaller brush. This is the number 1 round brush, and we can go over and add some details. So let's start off with our dark pink. I'm going to mix it with light pink a little bit. And then we can paint the middle of our flower. So I'm just dabbing my brush to create small circles and to create a bit of an organic shape. And now I will paint some really thin lines going outward. I'm not making these straight, but I'm giving them a little bit of an arch. Now I'm going to paint some small circles, random circles here and there. These don't have to be in a perfect circles. And these will be the end of our stamen. And I really love adding these because it always brings your flower to life. I don't really like this part of the center, so I'm just gonna remove it. It's still wet, so I can easily remove it with my tissue paper. And then I'm just gonna go over it one more time. And we can also add some small strokes to our tiny little flowers over here. So this will just add some detail and give it a bit more contrast and bring it to life. All right, this part is dry now, so I'm going to go back to the center and go over it one more time. And let's also add some details for our leaves. So I'm going to grab some darker green and create some thin lines for the veins. And for these ones as well up here, also add some thin lines for the veins of the leaves. Now, while our large flower is still wet, I'm going to go over it one more time with a darker pink color. So the center needs a little bit of work. And I also want to add some more shading to our petals. So with our light pink, I'm going to go over our petals a second time and add some more details. I will be adding some strokes. These could be thinner or thicker strokes. And for this petal as well, which is underneath the other petal, this one really needs a lot more shade here. And I'm going to blend it in with some water so we don't get a very harsh line. And I'm adding more detail to this leaf as well, making small strokes and adding more shading at the base of the petal near the center. And for this petal as well, which is underneath, I'm going to add a second layer of shading. I don't really like how the center is drying up. It's looking way too flat. So let me just add some water. What that'll do is it'll create some texture. So just keep adding more shading and more details where you feel that the flower needs it. And I like how this is turning out. And let me go over these circles one more time. I'm going to add a few more and make some a bit darker. And then we can move on to our heart. You can paint this whatever color you like. I'm going to choose the dark pink color. So just go around and paint your whole heart. And I'm just going to make it a bit lighter by adding some water and dabbing it with tissue. And that was it. This is our beautiful watercolor heart with florals, and I hope you guys had fun and that you will take a look at one of my other classes.